It started with an ordinary camera. Nothing about it looked special, just a secondhand Polaroid I picked up at a flea market, dusty, scratched, the kind of thing you'd expect to break after a few uses. But when I clicked the shutter and watched the first photograph slide out, I didn't know I was holding something far more unsettling than a piece of old tech. At first, the photos looked normal. A picture of my living room, messy with books stacked on a coffee table. Another of my neighbor's cat sitting on the porch. They seemed harmless, even boring. But the next morning, when I checked the photos again, something had changed. In the corner of the picture, where there had been nothing but an empty doorway the night before, a figure was standing. Blurry, half-hidden, but clearly there. A stranger. I thought maybe I had missed it earlier, or maybe it was a trick of the light. But the same thing happened again the following night. This time, in the photo of the cat, there was a face pressed against the window, pale and staring. The strangest part? The figures looked familiar. I recognized one from a missing person flyer taped to a streetlight downtown. Another I saw on the news, a girl whose family had been searching for her for weeks. I tried to brush it off. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. Maybe I was just seeing patterns where there were none. But each morning, more faces appeared. More missing people. And they weren't just standing in the background anymore. They were closer. That's when the fear sank in. Was the camera showing me ghosts? Clues? Or was something else happening? Something that connected me directly to their disappearances? The last photo I took was of my bedroom. At night, it showed nothing but the quiet space where I slept. But when I pulled the photo out in the morning, my blood ran cold. There at the edge of my bed was someone sitting, not blurred, not distant, clear, staring right at me. And I hadn't seen them with my own eyes. I didn't sleep much after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing the figure from the photograph, sitting at the edge of my bed, watching. The photo was still there on my nightstand, and no matter how many times I tried to convince myself it was some kind of glitch or trick, it looked too real, too human. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of Polaroids I had taken over the last week. One by one, I laid them out in front of me. Empty hallways, city streets, my living room. Each one slowly overtaken by strangers who weren't there when I pressed the shutter. What chilled me most wasn't just their presence, but their expressions. Some looked scared. Some looked desperate. A few even looked like they were trying to call for help through the frame. I searched online for answers. Maybe someone else had come across a camera like this. Maybe it was just a known defect, or some creepy urban legend. But nothing matched what I was experiencing. The only thing I kept stumbling are news articles. Faces of missing people, their stories cut short, families begging for answers. And the more I looked, the more I realized their images matched the ones staring back at me from the photos. That was the moment the camera stopped feeling like an object. It felt like a connection, as if it was showing me fragments of a hidden world, one that overlapped with mine. And whether I wanted to or not, I had become part of it. Still, I couldn't bring myself to throw the camera away. A part of me needed to know what it all meant. Another part whispered that maybe, just maybe, it could help solve the mystery of where these people had gone. But the other question was harder to silence. If the camera could reveal them, what else could it reveal? The following night, I made a decision. I set the camera on a tripod and pointed it toward my front door. I locked the door, double-checked every window, and sat awake until exhaustion finally dragged me under. In the morning, I pulled the photo from the tray. At first, it looked normal, my front door, perfectly still. But then I noticed something that made my chest tighten. The lock was turned, and standing just inside the door was another figure I didn't recognize. This one wasn't in the news. I hadn't seen them on any flyer, but they weren't looking at the camera like the others. They were looking directly down the hallway, toward my bedroom. I couldn't shake the image of that last photo. Unlike the others, this figure wasn't a recognizable missing person. No flyer, no news headline, no desperate family searching. Whoever they were new, and that terrified me more than all the others combined. Because if this stranger wasn't already missing, maybe they were about to be. The thought gnawed at me. Was the camera showing me the past? The present? Or was it warning me about the future? Each possibility carried its own weight, and none of them gave me peace. For the first time, I considered telling someone. Maybe the police. But how could I explain it without sounding unhinged? Here, officer. My magic camera spits out ghostly images of lost people. They'd laugh me out of the station, or worse, take the camera away before I figured out its truth. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak in the house made me think of that unlocked door. I walked from room to room, checking locks, peering out windows, trying to convince myself I was safe. Still, the silence of the house felt heavy, pressing in on me. In that silence, a thought grew louder. What if I wasn't supposed to go to the police? What if the reason I had the camera was because I was the one meant to uncover the truth? It wasn't the first time I had felt this pull toward mystery. My father had been a journalist, obsessed with uncovering hidden stories. He used to tell me that some truths don't find you. You have to chase them. He died when I was a teenager, but suddenly, with the camera in my hands, I felt his voice echoing back. The camera wasn't just haunting me. It was challenging me. So I dug deeper. I taped the photos to my wall, searching for patterns, locations, dates, anything that might connect the faces. And slowly, a terrifying pattern did emerge. Many of the figures weren't strangers to each other. I noticed one man's face in the corner of two separate photos. A woman's reflection appeared in more than one background. And in every picture, no matter the location, they all seemed to be turning towards something, as if looking at someone else standing just outside the frame. That's when a new conflict began inside me. Part of me wanted to throw the camera in the river, to burn the photos and pretend none of this had ever happened. But another part whispered that maybe I could prevent whatever was coming next. If the figure in the doorway really was someone about to vanish, then maybe the camera was giving me a chance to save them. But if that was true, then it also meant something darker. Because in the most recent photo, where that figure stood at my front door, the angle of their body was undeniable. They weren't looking out. They were looking in. And whoever they were about to meet, it wasn't a stranger. It was me. The photographs were no longer just images, they were warnings. Every time I looked at the wall of Polaroids, I felt like the faces were closing in, inch by inch, trying to cross from their world into mine. But the latest picture stayed burned in my mind. That figure inside my house, angled toward the hallway, toward my bedroom. Toward me. I couldn't stay still anymore. I grabbed the camera and loaded another sheet of film, pointed it at the door. Click. The picture slid out, whirring softly. My hands shook as I waited for the image to develop. When the shapes began to appear, my stomach tightened. The front door. Same as before. But this time, the figure wasn't standing by the door. They were closer, halfway down the hallway. Closer to my room. I dropped the photo. My pulse hammered in my ears. This wasn't just showing me strange scenes anymore. It was moving. Each new picture was bringing the figure nearer, step by step. And then, a terrifying realization. If they were getting closer in the photos, would they eventually arrive in reality? I forced myself to think. Maybe the camera wasn't just predicting, it was guiding, showing me something inevitable, unless I stopped it. But how? I thought about calling a friend, anyone who could ground me, keep me from spiraling. My phone lit up with my best friend's name, as if on cue. I almost answered, almost spilled everything. But then fear rooted me in place. If I dragged someone else into this, would the camera start showing them too? I stayed silent. The next photo was worse. The figure wasn't blurry anymore. Their face was forming, sharp and unmistakable. Male, mid-30s, expression blank, almost mechanical, and his hand was reaching toward a door handle. My door handle. The same brass knob gleamed in the background of the Polaroid, unmistakable, and my breath caught when I realized the shot wasn't just of the hallway anymore. It was my bedroom door. I snapped another picture, desperate. The film slid out, white and blank. I shook it, begged it to develop. Slowly, the darkness filled in, lines taking shape. And there he was, standing inside my room. The walls seemed to close in on me. My throat went dry. I didn't dare look around the room, didn't dare check the shadows. My eyes stayed locked on the photograph, because a part of me knew if I looked away, I might see him standing there for real. The camera slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. The photo trembled between my fingers, and just as I tried to breathe, to convince myself it was still only images I noticed something I hadn't seen before. At the edge of the newest photo, behind the figure, another shape was forming. Smaller. Watching. And it wasn't me. The second figure in the photograph haunted me more than the first. It was smaller, less defined, like it wasn't fully there yet. But there was something about its outline that felt painfully familiar. The curve of the shoulders. The tilt of the head. I couldn't shake the thought that I knew this person. I snapped another photo, hands trembling. The new image slid out, the chemical haze slowly fading. And then my heart stopped. The second figure wasn't a stranger at all. It was me, not the me holding the camera, not the me standing in the present moment. No, this was me, frozen inside the frame, standing in the corner of the room, staring directly at the man who had appeared in all the other photos. My stomach turned. It didn't make sense. How could I be in the picture? Unless the camera wasn't just showing missing people, it was showing the next one. And that meant my turn was coming. I stumbled back, clutching the photos, fighting the urge to tear them apart. But no matter how badly I wanted to destroy them, something inside me whispered that the truth wouldn't vanish just because the paper did. If the camera was showing me my fate, shredding the evidence wouldn't change the outcome. For the first time, I felt truly trapped. The missing people, the way they appeared closer in each shot, maybe they had all stood where I was standing now, watching themselves slip into the photographs, unable to stop it. The betrayal hit me like a punch. The camera hadn't been warning me. It had been hunting me, luring me in, feeding me just enough mystery, just enough hope, to keep me snapping photo after photo until it finally caught me in its lens. I wanted to run, to smash the camera into 1,000 pieces and bury it. But then another thought crept in, sharp and cold. What if destroying it didn't free me? What if it only locked me inside the final photograph, the way it had with the others? The Polaroids scattered across the floor, faces staring up from every angle. The missing, the lost, the forgotten. And among them now was me. A knock shattered the silence. 3 slow taps against the front door. My blood iced over. I hadn't invited anyone. I hadn't told a soul. But somehow, someone or something had come anyway. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Then came a 4th knock. Louder. And this time, it didn't come from the front door. It came from inside the house. The knocks kept coming. Slow. Rhythmic. Each one echoing through the walls like a heartbeat I couldn't escape. My body wanted to run, but my legs felt like stone. The camera lay at my feet, the newest photo still clutched in my hand, my own reflection trapped inside, staring back at me. Another knock, this time from the bedroom door. I forced myself to move. Crawling toward the wall of Polaroids, I pressed my back against it, my chest heaving. The faces of the missing stared down at me, silent witnesses. If they had all gone through this, none had escaped. What chance did I have? The door creaked open. For the first time, I saw him outside the photographs, the man. Mid-30s, blank expression, eyes flat and unblinking. He stepped into the room with the same mechanical slowness he carried in every image. His gaze locked on me, and for a moment, it felt like the photos had come alive, bleeding into reality. Why me? I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was asking him or the camera. He didn't answer. He simply lifted a hand and pointed to the Polaroid in my grip, the one that showed me. The truth struck like lightning. This wasn't about the people he had already taken. The camera wasn't just documenting the missing. It was choosing the next. And now it had chosen me. I had 2 choices: let the camera finish what it started or break the cycle. Heart racing, I picked up the camera. My hand shook, sweat slicking my fingers. I aimed it at him, the intruder who had stalked me through film and shadow. Click. The flash burst. The room went white. When my vision cleared, the man was gone. Vanished. Only the new photograph remained, sliding out of the camera's mouth. My breath caught as I turned it over. There he was, frozen in the frame, his expression unchanged. Trapped. Relief surged through me, sharp and dizzying. I had done it. I had beaten it. But then I saw something else. Behind him, blurred at first, another figure was taking shape. Smaller. Clearer. It was me again. Except this time, I wasn't standing in the corner. I was sitting on the bed, holding a camera, and in my hands, I wasn't just taking a picture. I was pointing it outward through the frame, toward the viewer. I froze, the realization sinking in heavy and cold. The camera hadn't spared me. It had passed me the curse. Now, I wasn't just the hunted. I was the one holding the lens. The room was silent, but it wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. It was heavy, almost suffocating, like the air itself knew something irreversible had just happened. The camera sat in my lap, its weight far greater than the plastic shell should allow. In my hand, the final Polaroid still burned against my skin, the intruder now trapped inside the frame, but behind him, the second figure, me holding the lens. For hours, I didn't move. I stared at the wall of Polaroids, at the dozens of faces that had haunted me since the first night. People the world had lost, reduced to headlines and flyers and whispered prayers. They were still here, locked in these images, silent and still but present. And now I finally understood. The camera wasn't just showing me the missing. It was pulling me into their story, forcing me to carry their weight. It wasn't about solving the mystery, not really. It was about inheritance, passing on the burden one desperate hand to the next. I thought about my father, about the stories he chased, about his belief that some truths are too heavy for one person to hold. Maybe that was what the camera had always been, a curse, yes, but also a responsibility. Someone had to bear witness. Someone had to remember the forgotten. I looked down at the photo again. My reflection in it felt like both a warning and a reminder. The curse hadn't killed me. Not yet. It had given me a choice. I could ignore it, bury it, pretend none of this had ever happened. Or I could do what I've been afraid to do all along, tell the world. Maybe people wouldn't believe me. Maybe they'd call it madness. But if even one family looked at these photos and saw their missing loved one, if even one life was touched by the truth, then maybe the burden wouldn't be wasted. I picked up the stack of Polaroids and carefully placed them in a box. Not hidden, not destroyed, but preserved. Evidence. Proof. A story that needed to be told. The knock on the door never came again. The camera doesn't just capture faces. It captures responsibility. And so, to whoever is listening, watching, wondering if any of this is real, remember this. The stories of the lost are never gone. They live on, waiting for someone brave enough to see them. Don't look away. Don't forget. Because sometimes the picture staring back at you is more than just an image. It's a call to action.